Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode one of On the Prowl podcast, where we're always hunting for the next big story. Today's topic of discussion is going to be the world of sports broadcasting production, and we're going to be joined by Mr. Kevin Connolly. He's been a sports reporter for Fox 8 News for the last almost 40 years, so he's got a lot of experience and insights for us today. My name is Penelope Pourchier, and these are my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Katie Himes.
Yeah, I'm Ethan.
I'm Nolan Hauser.
And I'm Jackson Bauer.
Now let's get started.
Hello, Mr. Connolly. How are you doing? How's your week been?
I'm great. No, everything's been good.
Good. Awesome. So this is for our sports news media class, and we were instructed to find someone that's been in the business for a little bit and has been a sports broadcaster, and my mind came to you. I know you've been working at Fox 8 for 40-ish years. You started, I remember, interning at 1986, I'm assuming.
Yep.
So yeah, we're just gonna
It's been a minute.
it's been a little bit.
Been a long time.
But yeah, we were just wondering if we could ask you some questions about your career and how it's been.
Yeah, no problem. Fire away.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm an open book.
Awesome. Okay, so can you give us a little bit of an overview about your career history and how you kind of got into this field? Because obviously we know you started interning here, but what kind of made you want to stay, made you want to go into this field?
When I realized I wasn't going to be the first baseman for the Baltimore Orioles, I wanted to stay involved in sports. And I credit two people, really, my mom and my high school baseball coach, really, for kind of pushing me in this direction. My mom would always say, you have all this like sports knowledge. Why don't you need to apply that to a career. And then when I was in high school, I thought about maybe being a teacher and a coach. And my high school coach was like, you can always go be a teacher and a coach. Nothing wrong with it, because I've made a career out of it. He goes, but maybe go give that sports broadcasting a try. He goes, you'll talk to anybody. You have a lot of worthless sports knowledge. So go give that a try. He goes, teaching and coaching would always be there. So that's sort of how I sort of went down that path.
That's amazing. So it was kind of gradual, you would say. It wasn't like one specific moment.
No, it was kind of gradual. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
For me. I mean, I love sports. I love the numbers. I love the statistics. And it just made a lot of sense to me.
That's
And
amazing.
then Mr. Connolly, if you don't mind me asking, you're from Winston-Salem, so I read are you from North Carolina originally?
No, I grew up
Okay.
outside of Baltimore, Maryland. I currently live in
Okay.
Winston-Salem.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm from North Carolina. That's why I asked. I'm from Charlotte. So you covered a lot of high school sports, and I read a bunch about you like studying sports, and I just was going to ask. I went to Huff High School in Charlotte.
Okay. All right.
So
So you were there with the Mays, weren't you?
No, so I played I'm a sophomore this year. So I was there, Coach
So he
Jenkins,
would have been.
Drake, I was in 8th grade when Drake was graduating senior. So they played Myers Park. That was my 8th grade year. I remember going to that game. We got killed.
Gotcha.
Mr. Connolly, I was just wondering, as a reporter, how much freedom do you have to, like express your own personal opinions, or are you sort of confined by like Fox and what you have to talk about?
Well, yeah, that's sports is different than news.
And yeah.
Let me sort of preface this comment with that. As television has evolved, particularly local television has evolved, your opinion and the why things happen in sports has become more important. Because the bottom line is, it used to be, hey, tune in tonight at 6 and 11, and we'll give you the highlights and the scores. Well, everybody already knows the scores, and the highlights. So what I have to do is tell the why. And lots of times, as you tell the why, you're allowed to inject a little bit of your opinion. And that's where there's a little bit more freedom for sports than in news. And
So is that like, so in the past you haven't really been able to do that because you were just talking about scheduling and stuff? Is that been like a more recent thing that you're able to talk about why and
a little bit more recent, but in the past we used to always do, when we would format shows, just say, the anchor is on the desk and then the reporter was at the game. We would always do highlights by the anchor and then toss to the reporter for the analysis of the game. So we've sort of always done that. But in the last, 10 years or so, there's been more of an opening to kind of inject a little bit more of your opinion. But the bottom line is you are still a reporter, and you need to stay on the facts. And then if there is an opening to where you can maybe put in a little bit more of your opinion, then you can do that.
Awesome.
That's awesome. And I think it's interesting that you bring up that point of like how certain aspects of your industry have changed over time. Like you said, like, oh, for a while it was just our job is to report on like highlights and statistics. And now it's more of like people want the narrative, like the story behind how certain things are going on, like the why. So I'm just curious, like, have you noticed over your career span, like any other changes in your industry, and like how have those affected how you do your job?
Think of a television station or a broadcast television station as a delivery system. Okay, it
Right.
used to and it used to be what we refer to as appointment television. All right, you got to tune in at 6, you got to tune in at 11. Well, appointment television it's in the past. So the message and the stories that you still want to tell are the same, but the delivery system has changed dramatically. Um,
Exactly.
Again, like if I'm at a Panthers football game, I'm watching the game, I'm analyzing the game, but I'm also tweeting out everything I see, right? So it's immediate. Um, After games are over, I haven't done it in a while, but like I'll go on Instagram or Twitter and I'll do a quick analysis for a minute. It's just me on camera talking about the game and what I saw. Where, I mean, 15, 20 years ago, we never did that. Again, you went to the game, you watched it, you analyzed it, then you put your story together and it aired in the newscast later in the day. The biggest change now is everything's more immediate, and
Mhm.
you have to be able to sort of multitask. You got to be able to sort of tweet out and do those types of things while you're still watching the game and writing your story or thinking about your story that you're going to put together for the news later in the day. But that's probably the biggest thing. Again, is the delivery, the way our stories get out and the way our message gets out is a lot different. I mean, if I do a feature story and it airs at 6 o'clock, X number of people are going to watch it. But if we post that story on our Facebook page and our website, far more people are going to see that story, but they're going to see it on their time. They're not going to see it as appointment television. So as long as you understand, the delivery system is a little bit different, and you embrace that, then your stories still get out there, and you still have an opportunity to make an impact.
Yeah, that's
Makes
really
sense.
awesome, like how y'all have been able to adapt to like the changing media landscape. just with all of those changes, like I feel like it's a reflection of not just the sports world, but society as a whole has just become so like immediate. You know what I'm saying? So it's cool that y'all are able to pivot in that way and like now deliver like that immediate content to keep up with the audience.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in some respects, you have to be even more careful now.
Mm,
You know, you don't want to stray too far away from the facts, and what happened. But again, you do have to be, you know, current is a word that I like to use. You know, the bottom line is in today's media, my advice to you guys would be to be as flexible and as adaptable as you possibly can.
mm,
And you also need to be extremely versatile. You know, I mean, the days of being a sort of a sports anchor where you come in and that's all you do, those days are long gone. Like, you have to be an anchor, a reporter, a producer, a photographer. You have to be, a web producer. I mean, you have to wear a lot of different hats, and the quicker you kind of embrace that, the better off you'll be, and the more you can do, the more marketable you'll be, to a future employer. But adaptability, flexibility, and versatility are essential. The versatility where you can do a lot of different things, the flexibility where you can pivot quickly to different things, and then the adaptability to all the different changing technology. I mean, think about this. When I first started in television, to do a live shot from Daytona or the Panthers games in Charlotte, we had to have a satellite truck. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my
Like,
gosh. Yeah.
it's a huge truck.
Hmm.
And now, I can do it on my phone. Like,
You got the cellular data now.
it's crazy. I mean, the single biggest piece of technology, I shouldn't say single, but the thing that amazed me the most was, and I don't exactly remember when it started, was is a piece of technology called a Degero. Other stations have them, and they're called live views. But it's literally a satellite truck in a box, and you can be live anywhere in the world as long as you can get a satellite signal. I can
Oh my
remember
gosh.
the first time I used it, I was at Daytona, and we used to, drive the satellite truck down there, and we would pull the cable, and we would literally be tied to that one location. Most of the time, we pulled the cable into Victory Lane, and we would be live in Victory Lane. But with the Degero technology, at four o'clock, or I guess we didn't have a 4 o'clock show then, but at 5 o'clock, I was live in the garage. At 6 o'clock, I was live standing at the start finish line. It was just amazing to me that that literally a whole satellite truck was now down into this little box. I mean, the Super Bowl, when the Panthers were in the Super Bowl in 2015, I was standing on the Golden Gate Bridge doing a live shot. I mean,
Whoa.
that was like crazy to me, to think of how far technology had come. And but just think how much technology is going to change for you guys going forward. So learning it and being open to learning all the new technology. I mean, I can't stress that enough for you guys.
So
That's really
off of
great
that,
advice.
oh, sorry.
No,
I
you're
didn't mean
good.
to
Go ahead,
interrupt you,
Jackson.
Penelope.
You're
I just
fine.
wanted to go into this question here. So what do you think is your favorite story that you've ever reported on? And with that, just go ahead and name three like the most memorable sporting events like you've like covered in the past.
Okay. In terms of like favorite events, I mean, the Super
Hmm.
Bowl. I mean, I'd never been to the
Oh
Super
yeah,
Bowl.
That's hard to
So
beat.
That's
being at the
pretty
absolutely.
Super,
awesome.
Obviously,
you
Panthers
know,
Super
Yeah.
Bowl.
I mean,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'd been to Panther playoff games. That was pretty cool. I had a couple of really good stretches. Like in the Panthers didn't go to the Super Bowl, but they went to the NFC Championship game. So in a span of like 3 weeks, I went to New York, Chicago, and Seattle for playoff games. So
That's
that was
awesome.
we did a live Panther pregame show from Seattle, and I'm standing in the tunnel. We were getting ready to end the show, and the Panthers come out. And they're literally kind of like all around me, and I'm finishing up the special, and so that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that moment. There was an ACC basketball tournament back at the Greensboro Coliseum. It had been away from the Greensboro Coliseum for a while, and Wake Forest beat North Carolina. And it's when Randolph Childress of Wake Forest went berserk. He scored like 100 points in 3 games, and it was just it was a big upset. Well, I guess Wake was the higher seeded team, but it was just an electric atmosphere. So that was pretty cool. I was at Richard Petty's last race, at the end of his career. That was pretty cool. But you know what, though? I mean, I don't have the best memory in the world, other than like for silly statistics and numbers and things like that. I once it's done for me in many respects. Like I kind of always look to the next thing. But there's definitely been some cool. There's been some cool things. One year I went. The Carolina Panthers were an expansion team. They played in the Hall of Fame football game in 1995, and we did a big special. So we did that on a Friday. The Panthers exhibition game was on Saturday. They played the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then I left from there and went to Indianapolis, where they were running the Brickyard 400 for just the second time. We spent like 3 days. I guess we kind of had 2 days off to drive to Chicago. And then we spent Thursday, Friday, Friday at Indianapolis covering the race. And then on Saturday, we drove to Chicago to cover the Panthers-Bears exhibition game. And that was a night game. Then we drove back to Indianapolis Sunday morning and covered the race that day. So that was kind of cool.
That's unreal.
Yeah, that was a little bit different.
So you would say that like traveling must be fun then, going to all those different events, just traveling across the country and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean that's the fun part. It really is. I mean, we don't quite travel as much as we used to, just because now we're in an ownership group that has a lot of stations across the country. So we cherry pick. And we can kind of get content from other stations in those markets. So I mean that we don't quite travel as much as we used to.
Gotcha.
But anyway, that is the fun part of it. Now, listen to me. When you travel, you go when you're out of the market. It's basically you work 24 hours a day. Like if you're like everybody goes, oh, it must have been so cool to be in San Francisco. Well, I mean, with the time change, literally I woke up and we went to work and we worked all day, and then we did it. We got up the next day and did it. When a couple years ago, when Duke and North Carolina were in the Final Four in New Orleans, and Mike Krzyzewski was retiring, it was his last Final Four appearance. That was crazy because we did 2 specials in 2 days, and it literally was just 2 of us down in New Orleans. So
oh my gosh,
that was a lot of work. Finally, I went. I can't write another script. I'm gonna wing it on the Monday before the championship game. So North Carolina beat Duke in the semifinals. So I guess we did a special on Friday. They played on Saturday in the semifinals. North Carolina wins. So then we're getting ready to do a special on Monday. It went before they played Kansas. and it just we didn't have that much access to the players, so there wasn't as much sound. So I did a lot of like standing out in front of the Superdome. Fans were coming by, and they would, we. So it was a little bit more off the cuff um, stuff at that point. So but that was a fun weekend too.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and since we've got you here, I gotta ask you. So you cover like a huge landscape in sports, whether it's NASCAR, basketball. You mentioned AC basketball, football. What would you say your favorite sport is to cover? Because there's got to be one. Like we all have that one sport we're
Yeah,
going to when we get home.
Hmm.
I mean, I really like covering the NFL. I really like going to Panther games. You know, and trust me, it's been really hard the last few years because they've been
Yeah, like
hard.
$10 tickets, easy to go. It's easy to go
Yeah.
now.
It's tough. I mean, it really is. I mean, and that's the I had a mentor. I worked with him for 20 plus years, and he had a couple of phrases or statements that have really stuck with me for many many years. Um, and whenever there was like, particularly if there was like uh, if we it would just say we were covering a college football game or a college basketball game, and it was against two teams in our area, so it would be like Duke and Carolina, or Wake Forest and Carolina, or whatever. We would always go to the losing locker room first
Oh,
because there's most of the time there's a better story in defeat than there is in victory.
For sure.
So we would try to go to the losing locker room first and get the raw emotion
mm,
answers. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily my proudest moment, but we were at the ACC tournament. It was in Charlotte. Duke just got upset by, I think, Georgia Tech, and I went in, and there's a Duke basketball player. His name was Phil Henderson, and I was asking him a question, and I was stumbling all over the place on this question. And finally, he just goes, I don't understand your question. I don't know where you're going with this. But then he just went off on the team and their commitment, and how guys weren't practicing hard, and that
Oh
they better get
gosh.
their act together before the NCAA basketball tournament, or they were going to get punched out. I mean, and it was really good stuff. And there's
yeah.
an example of a better story in defeat than there is in victory. When guys lose, they want to talk real quick, get out. If they win, they're going to stick around and they're going to talk forever, because they had this great victory, and they're happy to do it. But you have to go many times to the losing locker room first, and in many cases, there's a better story in defeat than there is in victory. So that's just something to think about as you go forward. Um,
Hmm.
be careful when, like, and I fell into this trap for a lot of years too, when you would ask a question and it really wasn't a question. It was like, oh, tell me about this situation. you know Ask specific questions, like, what were you thinking on this play, or what did you see on this play? And instead of tell me about whatever, I mean, ask specific questions. And usually, if you hone in on a specific play or topic or subject, then the interviewee, they go, oh, okay, they were paying attention. You know what I mean? They were really watching the game. They weren't just being a fan, just sitting there. So ask specific questions, um, and make sure they're questions. They're not statements.
Hmm.
Um, when you kind of go forward.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I like hearing about all the stuff that you've done. Obviously, I know that you do a lot of stuff with Wake Forest, NFL, obviously did Daytona, you focus a lot on that too. And just getting to hear specific stories is really cool. Um, and just knowing like how fast-paced it is. I think for me at least, that's what is most interesting about this field. You always got to be thinking like 3 steps ahead. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously you kind of said that. And that's kind of cool to hear, specific things about what you've done in Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Seattle. So thank you so much for your time. Does anyone have any more last questions that they want to ask?
Just want to say
No, I
thanks
just want to,
for your time. Yeah,
yeah,
really
thank you so much
appreciate
for
you
your
coming
time.
on.
Yeah,
We
Yeah,
no
thank you
really
problem.
very much.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. The other thing would be get an internship.
Hmm.
Do an
Mhm.
internship while you're in school somewhere. Find that um, you know, concentration or where you want to go, whether it's local television, whether it's radio, whatever. And if you do the internship, you're going to find out two things. One, if you like it enough to pursue it as a career, or two, you're going to find out, you know what, this sucks. I don't want to do. I want to do this. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and um, try to find something, a job or whether a career path where even the bad days don't zap your enthusiasm for the job and the career. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you
Thank
Yeah,
so
you
much,
very
thank you
Mr.
much.
so
Thank
much.
Connolly.
you
Thank you so
so
much.
much.
No
Cheers.
problem. Bye bye.
Have a great day.
I mean, wow, that was like a really great interview. Mr. Connolly had like so many great insights about like what it means to be working in sports broadcasting right now. And because of his extensive experience, like he was able to tell us a lot about how the sports industry has changed over time. And one topic that I think he touched on really well, which is also something that we've been talking about in class, is this whole idea of media convergence and how
Mm.
over time, like reporters and people working in the sports industry have kind of had to put on multiple hats and be a jack of all trades. It used to be the reporter had this job. You would go to the game and like take your notes, and then you would send your notes over to an analyst, and they would generate some statistics about stuff, and then somebody else would write up an article, and you had your like distinct role. But it's interesting to me how like he and many others have had to adapt, whereas now like one person is doing all of those things. And I just thought that's really interesting and good advice as we try to head into that world.
Yeah, he
Yeah, I
talked a lot
agree.
about the changes in the industry. Like especially when he's talking about like back in the day when you'd report later on, like hours and hours after the game actually happened, but he was talking about how, he'd be watching a game and tweeting out live updates,
Hmm.
which was another thing that I thought was pretty
Yeah, but
interesting.
you, you say stuff about Twitter though. Like you think about Twitter and how he was talking about you can do it now. Like think about all of the competition when you're doing that. Like me, anybody on this podcast right now could go and send something. You know what? Something we have been talking about in class is just like anybody can say anything. So having that
Mhm.
reliable source must be it's cool, but it must be hard for him, to navigate through that when everybody has an opinion, and it's not just a broadcast system. But
And
yeah,
kind of
I
like
just thought that was I
and
thought
kind of
that
like
would have
what
been
you guys were
tough.
saying with like just things changing from past to present, like all the new technology. Like he was showing his phone a bunch, like kind of like you were saying on Twitter, he could just go on and post like in the moment all these live updates and stuff like that. Which I thought was interesting. Also, when he talked about like traveling as well, because he brought up like during pandemic and everything, how he would, work from home. So that kind of just brings in the new technology part of it as well, and the new era of just, the job that he has.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
thought that
Nolan,
was
I think you bring
interesting.
up a good point because I've known Kevin since 2013. And
Wow.
my dad works with him, and I've met him a couple times, but I don't know him really well. So first of all, it was cool to see you know, get to know personal stories about everything that he's done because I've kind of watched on the outside in, but it's kind of cool to get like an inside look. He's so like obviously it's a local news station in WGHP. It's like Winston-Salem, High Point, just kind of like the Piedmont Triad a little bit. And they are in competition with like WFMY and a couple of like Raleigh, Charlotte news stations. And so it's really cool to see like how much they do and how much they kind of fight for that first number one spot of viewership. And I think the past I'm not going to say 10 years, but a good amount of years they've been the number one viewed local television station where they're located. So that's really cool that he
Wow.
kind of touched
Yeah.
on that. right, exactly. But I don't know. It was kind of cool to see where he's coming from because I mean he's done so much with Daytona 500, Winston-Salem, like that's incredibly local, and so obviously he's like
Hmm.
a big face for that, and they like rely on him. So I don't know. It's kind of cool to see like his take on everything.
I wonder if that's
Yeah,
part of the appeal of doing like a little bit of everything. How you're saying that, like, what you're saying, Penelope, about wearing many hats. Like, I wonder if that's, having a familiar face that, the audience can recognize. Like, maybe that's part of like one of the benefits of that change.
Yeah, I definitely think that could be very true for sure.
Mhm.
it keeps everything exciting. It keeps like everything on your toes, and especially he's seen the whole landscape. We only see okay media the past. I mean, I don't know how old you guys are, but the past like 20 years, what we can remember is like 10 years. So like
Yeah.
that media is, and he's been around since, I mean, 40 years of just seeing media and how it's developed. I mean, like what we talked about in class the other day with Stephen A. Smith, like those guys really brought like a whole different perspective of news media and news coverage. So now he's got to adapt to that when it used to just be like, okay, these are the facts of the game. And now there's kind of like I can have an opinion now. And I just think that's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's like I'm just curious like how much pressure that generates for certain reporters, especially people who
Mhm.
have like kind of been in the game for a while. Like I can't even imagine like to a certain extent how stressful that is. Like all of a sudden like this career that you've been working towards for so long, it's like flipped on its head in a way, and you have all this pressure of like, well, figure it out or somebody else is going to take your place who does know what they're doing, you know?
Yeah.
And but it's cool to see how people like Mr. Connolly have just adapted, and I feel like that just says a lot about this industry in general. Is like part of it is just you learn how to adapt and you keep moving, and it is what it is. And even one day, like if we end up in this industry, like we think we know what it is now, but it'll look totally different 10 years from now, and we'll be having to adapt. And so it's just cool to get that advice because like it will never stop changing and never stop evolving.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, kind of what we talked about in class. Like, it's kind of just up to like how bad you want it, like how bad you want to make it work, and how bad like you want this to be your life. And he like, I mean, he's been doing this for 40 years. He's been at the same station. He started as a photographer, and he, went around, did some independent stuff, and now he, hosts his own shows. He MCs a lot. He's like, I would say, is the face of sports for that station. And so like that's like he wanted it bad. So it's kind of cool to see like, if you're willing to do it and if you want it, like you're gonna make it happen.
It's interesting what
For
he was
sure.
saying, like about it's a lifestyle, really. Like 24 hours you're working is what he was saying. Like when you're traveling, you're always away and you're always like working and trying to find more information.
Yeah. But
Mm.
even with that,
Yeah.
you can kind of see like with everything he said, he has a huge passion for it. Like he loves what he does. Like he says 24 hours he's working, but I don't think he cares about that. I think he just really wants to dive straight into the next story. Like, he said he doesn't really look much in the past. He looks in the present and the future. So, I mean, he gave us some really good intel and it was like his favorite events, but I just think he lives for it and that's why so
For sure.
I really
Yeah.
saw that in what he said.
Yeah, it's like that catchphrase. It's like if you're on time, you're late. Like he's
Yeah.
always like
Hmm.
5 steps ahead of everyone. Because I feel like, especially in this industry, like you kind of have to. You got to be thinking about like everything. I know Sam talked about I think Grayson Mann, and he's always like writing stories about like the next Wednesday or next Friday or next Saturday, like just
Hmm.
having stories that like you will be able to report on like in the week just because that's what's going to happen, and you have to think about that, and that's how you like end up successful.
Absolutely. And now I'm actually curious, Ethan, I know since like you're not from the States, like I don't know if this is like something that's just an America thing, this like transition to like we want information about our athletes now. Like like from where you're from, like I mean, are you checking Twitter for like, for example, like rugby updates and like things like that? Like what is it like for you?
I'd say it definitely is like very similar, but nowhere near as big, like not on the scale even close
Really?
to, yeah, totally. Like when he was talking about reporting on, college games and stuff. That just does not happen at all. Like in Australia,
Interesting.
it's so much smaller. Like everything here, like I feel like, and because of how big it is, the details get completely zoomed in on. Like everyone's so focused on like all the little like intricacies of like the sports and the players and everything, which just that kind of level doesn't even happen even in like the on the big stages like the NFL and stuff like NRL, sorry. Even that, doesn't really happen as I'd say as intensely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like that's definitely like um a strong like indicator of just American culture and just like how much like we value our sports and how much it's just like ingrained into society of like, like we care. Like it's more than just like a sports game to us. Like we find our identity in our sports teams. And it's like we
Mm,
always want to know like, okay, how is this athlete doing? Like how did this game play out? Not even necessarily because like, oh, like we're just curious. Like it's like no, it's ingrained into our lives. Like and it's funny how it's like not necessarily like that everywhere.
Yeah, I
yeah, yeah,
agree. Have
totally.
y'all, I don't know if y'all have taken intercultural communication or media communication, but I took those two when I was studying abroad in Ireland. And anyone who takes those classes, especially in Ireland, they learn about kind of the like what we were just talking about, like kind of the differences between American communication and Ireland communication. And like for Ireland, they have one, I mean, granted, it's a incredibly small country, especially compared to the US, but their one big national news is kind of similar to like PBS or NPR. Like it's a
Mm.
public news station and they do radio news, and we got to tour it, and that was kind of cool. But they don't have like local TV stations like the US does. So I feel like obviously like you were saying, Penelope, like it's a huge industry. It's money making, it's powerful. It's all about like wanting to be at the top, which like I mean that's kind of like what I think America's kind of run on. But it's interesting to see like how different countries like utilize their media and like how they share kind of like what's going on there.
And that'll be it for today's episode of On the Prowl. You can tune into this podcast on the Sports News Media Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. Catch us next time.